Please welcome Cathy O'Connor.
Good morning, everyone. Actually, the last time I stood up here was Smooth FM's first birthday party. So we had a lot more mood lighting and stuff going on. So I'm feeling very relaxed, very calm, very orange. So, you know, you do so many of those management things and they're all blue and red and orange and green, and I just get so confused by them all. So I'll do my best to be blue and orange today when that might mean something else if I'm talking about another management instrument, as we call them. So thank you for having me. And Kamal, that was, where is he? He's gone. There he is. That was amazing. I think I stand here today not as the expert by any means in the topic of resilience, and I think because I've been in the industry such a long time, people assume I must be resilient, so maybe I'll come up and give you a talk on resilience, but that was my pen. I think my talk today is probably just more about my experiences, and when Kamal was talking, I think a lot of what I'm going to talk about is quite consistent with some of the frameworks that he provided, so that felt good to me. But I think above all, it all starts with passion for what you do, and you know, I've worked in radio for all of my adult life now, and I am still incredibly passionate about it. It's not an easy industry to work in at times. It can be very tough, but I think that at the heart of resilience, you know, there is a big motivation piece, and motivation comes easily when you're passionate about what you do. So today I think Kamal talked about the me, the we and the it, and I thought that as a framework I am going to talk about the me, because I think first and foremost how you show up in your life is a large part of, you know, who you are and how you operate. So I'm going to talk a bit about the how and my mental framework and how I approach things. And secondly, I absolutely agree, there is a massive team piece here. You know, I don't work in isolation, I work with 500 people. We're achieving extraordinary things at the moment in terms of growth, but I do believe the single biggest driver of our success has been the work we've done around the team and the psychology around the team and how we operate. So, you know, it's nice to hear Kamal share some of those thoughts with me. And the definition that I pulled out of the dictionary was about coping with stress and adversity. For me, I think, you know, the term bouncing back, which I think was used at the beginning, is really what it's about. The ability to just keep moving forward really defines resilience to me. So someone asked me how long I'd been in the industry a couple of weeks ago, and I knew it was over 25 years because someone at CRA, Commercial Radio Australia, gave me a really tacky certificate. And it was actually 27 years when they gave it to me, because I didn't clock that it would have been 25 years, but I sit on the board of CRA, so we were talking about who were getting the certificates. And I thought, 1985, hey, where's my certificate? So, you know, I've never really had a sense of being in the industry a long time, although now I stand back and think, wow, that has absolutely flown. And in the media industry, across that period, it'll be 30 years in January. I've been floated twice. I've worked for 4 different radio companies, been sold, so new owners twice. I've been part of a hostile reverse takeover, which was when Triple M actually took over Today FM in the early 90s. And then I actually had to lead the merger of those 2 brands, which is like, you know, Coke and Pepsi. Some used to say the Cowboys and the Mormons, very respectfully, for anyone of that religion. But it was 2 massively opposing cultures, and I was 30 years old when I had to do that. I've launched 5 brand new FM stations, and when you're launching new licenses, you get a deadline, you have to be on air by a certain date, so that was incredibly intense. And then, of course, part of any career, I had to relaunch 2 of them, not once, but twice. So a little bit of failure along the way as well. And of course, that's over and above just the cut and thrust of the radio industry itself. So I've been number 1 in the ratings, I've been number 10 in the ratings. I've worked at a station that was number 1 that went to number 10. That was 2SM, and I wasn't controlling the product in those days, but that was really about the march of FM. So Triple M today were 5 years old, and it was, you know, the changing behaviours were kicking in there. But against all of that, my career has progressed very steadily. So I think that there is probably something around the attitude I think that you bring to the job, regardless of what's happening around you. So before I get on with my mental state and the way that I approach sort of the work piece, I think that resilience all starts with the person that you are. And if we really want to go all the way back in my case, I'm one of 6 kids. So if I can ask you all a question, you know, in terms of child 1 through to 6, where do you think I fit in the order? First? 6th? 3rd? Okay, that's good. We've got a cross-section of views. Well, I'm going to use a 70s reference to make this next point. But hands up who has ever heard of the Brady Bunch. It's always careful when you are old, you do make these references and people look at you. Sometimes I say things at work like, oh, the Brady Bunch, and my staff go, what the fuck are you talking about? Anyway, this was a big show in the 70s, so when I was growing up, I had a PhD in Brady Bunch. And we had 3, oh, shivers, regal, that's my heel going through the crack in the floor. We had 3 girls and 3 boys in our family, and I was Jan Brady. So slap bang in the middle. And, you know, I do run the risk of massive generalisations here, which, you know, to say that there are, you know, you are defined by your birth order. You know, I had a little bit of a look at what the characteristics of the classic middle child are. And so the conventional wisdom goes, those that have done studies into this say that the firstborn are the more entitled, respectfully. Hands up if you're the firstborn. Yep, think the world owes you, that's good. The youngest in the family, hands up the babies. Okay, well you're the spoilt, indulged ones because you get to be the babies all your life. And the rest of us are left to fend for ourselves in the middle. So what they say about middle children, apart from the fact they can be misbehaved, is that we are born negotiators. We are often great team players. We play the role of peacemaker. And perhaps we just have a slight dose of insecurity because we're always trying to get noticed. So if I look at those qualities, I think, you know, perhaps that being a middle child has actually prepared me quite well for a career in the media where all of those qualities, you know, are entirely useful. Now, Jan was a little bit too insecure. She was really jealous of Marsha. And I get on pretty well with my sisters, so I'm not you know, sure that I absolutely typify the Jan Brady model. But I think as a young person, I was a pretty happy soul. You know, I liked to deal in good news, and I brought a lot of good news home. And I think that in my family dynamic, the reason I sort of bring this up is whether you believe, you know, the studies or not, it is how I've been bred to think. And, you know, I think it's that raw material that you bring into the workplace and that I've sort of drawn from. My mother was a very optimistic person, a very stoic person, but a very gentle and calm person. So I think she was personified the orange. And so, you know, in many ways, I really just raised that as a point of reflection. And they do say that in the family environment, it is the first place where we really learn how we operate in a team, because we've got 6 kids all crowded around the Neapolitan ice cream and everyone's going for chocolate. You know, you learn a lot about teams and how to, you know, kind of, you know, get what you want, or at least create harmony or not. So, so that's, I suppose, what, you know, what predated any instance. I took those qualities with me into university and ultimately into the workplace. And the me is probably, as Kamal said, I think the next really important piece. You know, I think it does all start with self, as a leader particularly, and, you know, it's almost a bit of a cliche to say let's be self-aware, and in being self-aware we'll lead others better. But I do think it's almost a cliche, but the attitude of really being the one that actually controls your own destiny, and not sort of falling into the victim mindset, is, you know, I think something that absolutely resonates with me as a way of operating. You know, that thing about life it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it. I think that in my sort of life, the discipline of being really good at what you listen to as a leader is important. Those voices about, you know, did I do that right? You know, are we as good as them? Are the competitors on to us? You know, is the client happy? I think we're losing there. I don't think we're going to win the pitch. All those sorts of voices will always be there. But developing the discipline about what you let in and what you listen to, and actually being comfortable with those voices, but actually saying, I'm okay today, I hear you, but we're going in this direction, I think is very much part of it. One of my favourite quotes is an Eleanor Roosevelt quote, which is, you are nobody's victim without your permission. And I think fundamentally I believe that my destiny, my success, our success is within my control. And I think in the industry where things are changing so rapidly, that actually can mean just not being comfortable that you have all the answers. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. In my experience, one of the things that really gets in the way of resilience is a trait that I observe far too frequently in business, and probably our business is really full of it, and that's the drama queens. And you know, we talked about I think it's the red quadrant. Drama is debilitating, and many people make drama an art form in our business. And you know, whether you are playing the role of the victim or the persecutor or the rescuer, this is all shit, but don't worry, I've got it, I'll rescue the pitch, we'll be there tomorrow. It really gets in the way of productivity, and it really takes its toll on people. And I think some of our more recent success has been around the ability to pick this dynamic in the workplace and actually call it and deal with it. So I think that is probably a little bit about, you know, the red and the black, you know, to put it to Kamal's framework. And really as a leader and as a business, I think what we have tried to do is move it out of the emotion and the theatrics and into the calm, fact-based conversations. And there's a lot that you can do as a leader, I think, to create the environment where that dynamic, you know, is a way of operating. And finally, just on the head piece, I think some of my best opportunities have been my biggest failures. And you know, if we're sort of in the safe sort of place of sharing, probably the launch of the Vegas stations in Sydney and Melbourne, I think gave me all of the energy that happened in 2005 for what happened after it. And my boss at the time, Paul Thompson, actually said to me one day, as I've read another press article just caning us, and you know, you get people who haven't worked in the industry for 20 years for good reasons writing to you and giving you advice and stuff. It's just like, oh, bad, all bad. You know, and he said, this is the best thing that's ever happened to you. And I said, yeah, I'm not sure the shareholders think that, but you know, I understood it. And I think one of the reasons why we then went to a very clear and calm strategy around Smooth, very calm, Smooth FM, you know, was taking the learnings from that failure and actually being really comfortable in saying, you know what, we really stuffed that up. Here's all the things we did wrong, and how do we learn from that and not carry it into the next sort of initiative. The work-life balance thing, I didn't actually come here to talk about that, and I didn't come here to talk about stress management either, because they're not things that I actively or consciously deal in. I think a lot of the questions that came from Linda were about work-life balance, and for me that's just about aligning expectations at home. The big advice there is that just do what you say you're going to do. And if that means, hey honey, I'm not going to see you for a month because I'm on the road and I'm doing 700 things, and you know, that's okay, but obviously if you've got a good partnership with your kids and your husband, and you declare it up front and you call it out and you buy into it, then you know, in my experience, it's when that's not clear or you're a bit worried about how far you're pushing it, so you don't do that, that things can come off the rails a little bit. So that's a little bit about the me, and now to use Kamal's framework. That was an amazing statistic that 80% of stress at work is about not getting the team dynamic right. I absolutely agree with that. And it is the journey of Nova Entertainment. We're in a very nice sweet spot at the moment where we have, I think, nearly 40% growth last year in profit this year, closer to 20% on top of that. We have hit this really sweet spot, and I put it down to the work that we did on the senior executive team, the heavy lifting around the team dynamic. And so what we did there was, I don't think there's a magic bullet here, and I don't think this stuff is particularly groundbreaking, but we developed a playbook, and we got offside as we all do, and we absolutely created a safe environment where we could develop an operating code about how in the business we would work. And when I call out the group executive playbook, which is my team, speaking with truth and candour is first and foremost. No sacred cows. Seeking first to understand, and I think there's that second piece to that about making sure that people have been heard. I've got your back, and call it out. Calling out the behaviours, what's working and what's not. Now that might seem, pretty basic sort of stuff, but I honestly think that we truly made that work. It was a genuine shift in the energy in the room, where we felt we could call out what was working and what wasn't. That at times led to conversations around my leadership, and to this day still does. And equally, conversations about everyone in the room and their contribution. And when you get into that sort of honest space with a team, I think resilience builds, because suddenly it's about the greater good. It's not about the individuals in the room, but the greater good. And when people feel safe and they've bought in, I think that's when you build resilience in a business. The other thing in my experience with staff, and the question of, be resilient yourself, but how do you build it in a team? I do think that if people know what's in it for them, they will go the extra mile. And I think businesses sometimes lose the reason that they're in business, and lose their purpose and lose their clarity around what all the hard work is leading to. So I think, we've done a lot of work on an employee value proposition, and that does, transcend beyond the purpose of the company to what it means to work for Nova Entertainment. So I'll work hard for you, but I want to know what's in it for me, from the business. So for me, it's about doing the basics well, and, really taking the time, as we do quite regularly. We'll be off site Thursday, Friday this week, just, revisiting that energy and that dynamic in the group exec. So if it's at all helpful, the playbook, the code of operating, to me is as important as it has ever been. I think having that culture goes a long way toward the performance that we've built in the business. And finally, there are a lot of questions around problem solving, and I think from my perspective, one of my favourite quotes is a Winston Churchill quote. All my quotes come from politicians or their wives for some reason. And Winston Churchill said, "When you're going through hell, just keep going." And I think that sense of forward momentum of always sort of saying, take a step in a forward direction. And I think in media these days, and our industry is certainly no different, feeling comfortable with not necessarily having all the answers. What I think I'm okay with not having all the answers, and the business not having all the answers. What I'm not okay with is not doing anything about finding the answers. And so I think that, everything that we do is incredibly complex. But I find that stress levels are absolutely diffused if you just do something. So it's the inertia of saying, oh God, how are we going to do this programmatic trading thing? Or how are we going to contemplate streaming music providers? Do something. And that can be only a small step. Read something, make a meeting, call an offsite, get outside the business, look for answers. Those things in of themselves bring more energy, and in the process, resilience builds. I think, and it comes back to the drama theme too, trying to work on problems. I think the biggest issue is defining what they are, not personalising them, and keeping that default to action alive within the business. So they would be my thoughts, and obviously happy to have answer any questions. I think as a CEO in the industry these days, the whole stereotype around being a hero and having to have all the answers, I think is entirely irrelevant. My own resilience, I may bring certain attributes to the job, but I think our resilience, our growth in a pretty flat industry at the moment is about the work we've done around the team. So it's a bit about self, it's a bit about team, the me, the we, and problem definition being the it. So thank you, and I think the closing sort of slide is thank you for being resilient and putting up with my 10 cents worth over the last few minutes. Thank you.